What's up, YouTube? Capital G here. Has your body recovered from that absolute bombshell of an FNL list update that Konami dropped on us yesterday? Well, regardless if it has or not, the format starts anew on Monday, January 20th. And what better way to prepare yourself than to watch this video and figure out what the best decks and the meta are going to be? In this video, per usual, I'm going to try to break down what I believe are going to be the 5 best decks for the start of next format. Of course, I will take into consideration all products that will be released up until the very end of March, because that's when we are going to probably have the start of a new format. And I'll tell you guys why I believe that some of these decks are going to be incredibly solid. And these are the decks that you're going to have to look out for if you're not going to be playing one of these decks. You need to know how to beat these decks. So at the 5 spot, I have my favorite Ghost Girls in the game, Altergeist. Altergeist have been the definitive trap deck in the competitive meta for some time now, and I think that they're going to continue on with that title. Hell, if you told me that Altergeist Poonkuri was confirmed for the next month or so, I'd probably have Altergeist even higher on this list, because that card really makes the ceiling of Altergeist turn 1 plays just significantly better. But even without some buffs on the ban list, because Altergeist didn't get any direct buffs, we didn't get more copies of Altergeist Multifake or anything like that, there were certain things that happened on the ban list that definitely benefited this archetype greatly. I'm looking at you, Red Reboot, going to 1. You can ask any Altergeist player. Red Reboot puts the fear of God in you, and it puts you in imminent danger when the card is resolved. It turns off all your traps and basically leaves you defenseless. A lot of times you end up getting OTK'd. If nothing else moving forward, now you can take solace in the fact that you should always have more copies of Solemn Judgment at your disposal than your opponent has Red Reboot. So that's obviously going to benefit the archetype. Also, other cards like Dino Wrestler Pankatrops, that card was always really solid against control decks. You only have to deal with 1 copy of that. I feel like, control is going to be a little better. The format should slow down a little more, and a slower format definitely benefits Altergeist. The deck is still going to struggle with offense because it just doesn't have any, so that will still be a major issue. But defensively, I think Altergeist should be really solid and a great deck moving forward. Number 4, Guru Control. There's a possibility that I have this deck a little too low, but I think only time will tell. I think it's going to be one of the best control decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Moving into this new format. I still think that the offensive ceiling of the deck is incredibly low, but the consistency is going to be fairly high. And when you really look at the FNL list, there were so many things that could have went wrong for Guru, and it really feels like a lot of their power cards completely skated. Take for instance how Konami went on an absolute onslaught when it came to the draw card, Sekka's Light, Card Demise, even Into the Void all being hit to 1, but conveniently Pot of Extravagance is still at 3. We know Guru Control does not care about its extra deck, and despite not caring about its extra deck, it can still incorporate Super Polymerization into the main deck. That is still an incredibly powerful card. Some people were a little puzzled that it's still at 3. This is one of the reasons why I really like Guru Control as a control deck going into the format. I feel like going second, it's a little better than Altergeist, because being able to run those super polys in the main deck gives you a much better chance of breaking your opponent's board if they have a really strong established field. And I'm going to be honest, there can only be one. Being able to be main deck in this deck is one of the biggest reasons why I like Guru Control. We've already seen that it's one of the best floodgates in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! We saw it in decks like Sky Striker, we saw it in decks like True Draco. I think Guru Control is just better than those decks now, because it didn't lose anything. Now you can keep a lot of the meta decks in check. Flip over, there can be only one at the right time, and you can shut your opponent down. Also, Guru does have that, searchable Infernity Barrier that can activate from the hand, and Subterra Fiendus, that's always going to be very strong. As I talked about with Altergeist, Dino Wrestler Pankatrops going to 1 really helps Guru Control out. I feel like everything just kind of went right for Guru Control. They didn't lose any of their power cards, and a lot of the stuff around them just got significantly worse. Number 3, Salomon Grey. This is the deck that I struggled with the most by far on this entire list. You guys know my knee-jerk reaction was that Salomon Grey was absolutely donezo. I didn't think that it was going to be able to function without Mirage Stallion, but I really have come full circle in a very short amount of time, especially after really thinking about it and discussing it with others. I think Salomon Grey are going to have to structurally change. I think the ratios are going to massively be flipped in the archetype, but really when you think about it, even losing, in my opinion, the second most powerful card in the entire archetype archetype after Gazelle. Salomon Grey still has so many ridiculously strong individual cards. Also, I don't think it's ever going to be a problem getting to Gazelle turn 1 with 3 copies of Lady the Bug, 3 copies of Signet Mining, and then also still having access to Circle. It should be a card you always get to turn 1. I think the biggest issue with Salomon Grey moving forward is now when you activate Gazelle's effect, you kind of have to make a decision if you want to send a Jack Jaguar or if you want to get access to one of your traps. But the biggest thing that can kind of solve that issue is by simply running more copies of the traps. The trap cards are really not bad if you happen to draw them. We know that something like Salomon Grey Roar can be excellent discard fodder for cards like Twin Twisters, or maybe even things like Signet Mining, considering that Roar can just reset itself from the graveyard. But Dante also isn't the worst option the world has ever seen as far as being a replacement for Mirage Stalio. Of course, it's not nearly as strong in Salomon Greats, but it can mill a lot of useful things to the graveyard. It can get Jack Jaguar or Falco in the graveyard. Maybe you have to run multiple copies of those cards, but even if you don't, being able to just happen to mill maybe something like an Ash Blossom or Rage or a Roar, all of which can be added to your hand with the effect of Salomon Great Sunlight Wolf, those can be very beneficial. Now, the Dante really won't serve much of a purpose when it comes to actually floating, and losing the removal effect of Mirage Stalio definitely sucks, but I still feel like individually, there's just too many strong cards in Salomon Great to just discredit the entire archetype because of the loss of one card. I also don't think the grind game of Salomon Great is going to be affected much at all. We know that generally speaking, you'd only resolve Mirage Stalio like one time in a duel, so I feel like the grind game is still going to be the deck's strongest asset, and generally if you can just get through your opponent's initial punch, I feel like the deck is going to be incredibly solid. Again, I feel like you'll probably just have to run more copies of the traps and just, up some of your ratios, and I think the deck should be able to stabilize itself moving forward. Number 2, Heroes. I don't really want to specify which one, Elemental, Mass, Destiny, Vision, because you kind of run all of them in the deck. Anyways, Heroes was already arguably on that rogue tier 2-ish level, and it got a huge boost with some of the cards released in our most recent legendary duelist. And not only did it get some amazing boss monsters like the Elemental Hero Sunriser, which gives you some serious OTK potential when you're going second, you got a lot more consistency just making your plays. I think Heroes are going to be one of the decks in Yu-Gi-Oh for the next format that doesn't really have a problem going first or second. Most decks kind of have that defined mindset of I really want to go first, I really want to go second. Not really with Heroes. Heroes obviously can go second, they can break boards, they can OTK like nobody's business. However, if they go first, they can still set up things like Destiny Hero Plasma to kind of skill drain the opponent out of the duel, or Mass Hero Dark Law, which, let's be real, no one likes playing against that card. Because of the high offensive ceiling of this deck, its offense being so potent and its ability to play through disruptions incredibly easily, I feel like Heroes will probably be the definitive go second deck of the meta because they have the ability to push through those disruptions and OTK at the drop of a hat. I also think that just Colossus being banned, that could not have went better for Heroes. This is a deck that searches a ton, and now probably Ash Blossom is the only way your opponent's going to stop you from searching. Also, Lightning Regeki being released in Ignition Assault, that lines up so well for Heroes. They now have access to a complete blowout card against control decks, and unlike something like Evenly Matched, it still gives them the ability to OTK and win the game during that turn. I really like Heroes going into this format. I think that maybe some players will sway away from the deck because of the price, but it's going to be a strong deck, definitely. My honorable mentions are Mermail and Magical Musketeers. Finally, to my number 1, and I never thought that I would say this again, Spiral. You guys remember when Spiral was absolutely busted tier 0? Well, with the addition of Magician Souls, which was supposed to be a Dark Magician card, they now have plays that are incredibly reminiscent of that. Yes, Magician Souls does help Dark Magician, but it does a lot more for the Spiral archetype. And you know what? I promise you, one day Jerome McHale is going to be an old man. He's going to sit down at the table with a bottle of whiskey and think to himself, Why didn't we put hard once returns on like half of those spiral cards? We could have avoided all of this madness time and time again. There are many plays with the spiral deck where if you open with Rescue plus Magician Souls or Where Art Thou and Magician Souls, you end up with either a full extra link board, which can still be quite effective until we get the Master Rule 5, or you end up with a board with like Appaloosa, Sleeper, popping 2 cards for free every turn, and still having a Tri-Gate negate for whatever your opponent wants to throw at you. And by the way, these openings don't even take into consideration possible extenders, and yes, there will be lots of dangers in the Spiral deck moving forward. I think Spiral's ceiling is arguably the absolute highest in competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now. I think that it is absolutely going to be a terror if you don't have a way of stopping them. My one reservation with Spiral is I have seen some of the combos, and there are very specific choke points where maybe if you hit them with a well-timed Nibiru or a Cyframe Gear Gamma, you can effectively shut down the combo, but it just takes so little resources to kind of start that engine up. I'm talking 2 cards essentially to win the game. It reminds me very much of the Spiral format, so I think the Spiral will be probably the scariest deck in the entire game. Anyways, those are just my thoughts. If you guys agree or disagree, leave it in the comment section below. I feel like this is a format where a lot of decks can be incredibly solid because the FNL list did so much, and it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on that notification bell for daily videos.